Welcome to Principles of Success. This is Week 8, Session 5. This course is a part of Malco Institute of Technology's Leadership Series. Our companion text is See You at the Top by Zig Ziglar. Welcome to Week 8, Session 5. Today we continue working on Segment 5, the importance of a right mental attitude. We are looking at attitude attributes that can put you in the right mindset for achieving entrepreneurial success. Step 10, maintain a strong work ethic. Your employees will follow your lead. It will also help you to beat your competition by outworking them, particularly when your product or service is very similar. Step 11, rebound quickly from setbacks. There surely will be plenty of ups and downs as you build the business. Learn from the setbacks and move on. You cannot change the past. Step 12, periodically get out of your comfort zone to pursue something important. Many times you will feel uncomfortable in implementing a needed change in technology, people, mission, competing, etc. For the company and you to grow personally, you sometimes have to step out of your comfort zone. Many organizational and leadership shortcomings can be overcome or mitigated with the good attitudes described in these 4 sessions. All can be learned except passion, which comes from within. Take time out to periodically reflect on these attributes. You may be inspired to act. I invite you to watch this video entitled How to Rebound from Setbacks. Additional resources are available on our website. Join us next time for Week 9, Session 1.
We all have those times in our lives where we screw up, we fail. It happens. But it might be that what happens next is the most important part of all. And that part you do have control of. To help us with rebounding from failure is Rick Newman. He's a columnist for Yahoo Finance and the author of Rebounders, How Winners Pivot from Setback to Success. Rick, welcome to Smart Life. Glad to have you with us.
Hi.
Yeah. You make so many statements that I think are so important that most people have never said. One is that you say, if you're going to fail, you need to be ready to fail well. I've been coined before. People have said tiny but mighty. So let me just say, even though I am small, my fails are epic. They are huge. I do it really, really well. So how do you fail well? How does somebody even know how to do that in the throes of a fail?
Your failures are out of proportion to your size, I guess is what you're saying. I think there are a few ways. First of all, understand that failing is a fairly normal thing, especially if you're trying to do something hard. Take on challenges, but understand a lot of people have tried something hard and not succeeded the first time, the second time, the third time. There are tons of examples of this. And the people who get it right the fourth time or the fifth time, if you will, are the people who learn something from what they've been through. You just went through a really informative experience. Try to figure out, try to be somewhat analytical about it instead of emotional. Figure out what you could have done better. And most importantly, don't blame anybody. Most of all, don't blame yourself. Just take kind of a clinical approach to it. Look at it under a microscope, figure out what didn't go right and how you can maybe fix those things the next time.
Yeah, because some people's brains just automatically do some of that stuff. I recognize things you're saying in there that I can think about my own personal failures and go, yeah, my brain just did that. It said, wait, what am I going to do differently next time? But if you're one of those people whose brain just doesn't go this way, does it help are there tools involved? Are there things you can think of, ways that people can learn, aside from buying your great book, in addition to, I should say, to just get their thoughts right immediately following a failure?
Yeah, obviously, I'm not a psychologist, so I can't counsel anybody on mental exercises or things like that. But first of all, you were talking about the ability to bounce back, known as resilience. this is something that is absolutely learnable. So some people are born with, most people, in fact, are born with some natural amount of resilience, but a lot of us build it as we grow up. Our parents help with that, the environment we grow up in. So this is something, this is not sort of like intelligence where you either have it or you don't when you're born. It's really more like a skill, like learning to play the piano or learning how to do math or something like that. So I think one starting point is realizing just how many people have been through experiences like this. So when I was writing this book, I mean, what I started to realize is that if you pick a successful person in the field of business or whatever field interests you, chances are pretty good that somewhere along, they just didn't skate to the top. Somewhere along the way, they had setbacks, they struggled. And what really set them apart wasn't the fact that they were just inherently brilliant. It was that they somehow found ways to overcome whatever got in their way. So if you study what happens with other people, that's a good place to start.
I like that. I've always wished I were an optimist. I'm married to an optimist. I'm the best pessimist you'll ever meet. And I'm surprised by a statement you made here also, that defensive pessimism trumps optimism, at least in this context. Tell us.
Yeah, I made the case, and this is based on some very, very solid research by psychologists and other people. Optimism is overrated, and pessimism is probably underrated. And the reasons for this are this phrase defensive pessimism refers to people who they tend to believe things will go their way, but only if they work at it. When we think of optimists, I mean, one way to think of that is people who just kind of expect things to go their way just because they deserve to have things go their way, or because that's the way the universe ought to work. The stars should just align in their favor. You've got a lot of kids raised these days.
Yeah.
We're told by the parents you're special. Things will just break your way, and you sort of reach an age, most of us anyway, where that you realize that just doesn't happen. So optimists who just expect things to work out tend to they have a hard time recovering when their whole worldview is basically shattered and things don't just work out. These people called defensive pessimists have the idea that they can turn some things to their favor by working at it and by persisting and so forth. It doesn't mean everything's going to go their way, but they have a belief in their own ability to affect some of the things. And I think that's the difference, is when you realize I'm not going to get everything right, but I have some ability to control things and even turn things around when they don't go right. That's what's known as defensive pessimism.
Okay, well, nobody wants to wallow in their failures, but you say an important part of this also is you call it owning the suck. Taking command of the pain and sorrow and really experiencing that. How do you know the difference between that and just wallowing in your self-pity?
That's not, I wish I could claim ownership of that phrase. That comes from the military, and an Army officer named Tammy Duckworth, whom I profiled in this book, kind of told me about that. Owning the suck is when you're in the middle of something terrible and you simply say, again, this goes back to don't blame anybody, don't indulge in fault finding, just say, I'm in the middle of a bad situation and I need to, for example, behave by the best professional standards I can. I need to have a vision for how I'm going to come out of this on the other side. I need to know that there is something better in the future and I need to figure out a way to get to it, instead of what a lot of people do, which is feeling sorry for themselves when you tend to get emotional. And that's natural in many cases, but it often prevents you from finding the best way through and setting yourself up to recover on the other side. So I think that's what owning the suck is. But I'm happy to say I've never been in the kinds of miserable circumstances in places like Iraq and Afghanistan, and some of the troopers who really had to own the suck.
Yes, exactly. I want to ask you, because I know when you do research for a project like this, you come across the most amazing stories. What's your favorite failure to success story?
I really did like the story of Tammy Duckworth. She was a double amputee helicopter pilot. She got shot down in Iraq, and she didn't just come back and survive from that. She actually got into a new field, which is she went from being a military officer to trying to run for Congress, and she lost the first time she ran. And she said it was devastating, and she had never been the type of person who was a joiner or somebody who would even raise her hand as a volunteer. She was always just a kind of a trudge along person. And you can really sort of chart the transformation of this person as she really developed the kind of courage from overcoming, the injuries she sustained in Iraq. And she ran for Congress again. So she didn't just bounce back from the helicopter crash she was in. She bounced back from losing an election, dusted herself off, ran again, and she's now a member of Congress from Illinois.
And How important are heroes to this whole process? Do you have to have heroes, people you look to, people who've gone before you? How important is a hero in that whole visioning process?
I found that it's very important to have heroes because you need something to motivate you when you are really sort of at the bottom of the barrel. And this is one of the things, even if you sort of romanticize the experience of people you look up to, that can be very helpful when things are really going wrong. And, one thing we know about very successful people is they sometimes even have a little bit of an inflated sense of their own abilities. And when you combine that with some of the other attributes that help people become rebounders, as I wrote about, that actually helps them almost fulfill these inflated expectations they have of themselves. And I think having heroes is one of that. You create a target, you go after something somebody else has achieved. And it's a way of setting kind of a high bar for yourself and keeping your eye on something that's not in the muck with you when you are really struggling.
And so, what is the exact, I guess, the sharpest distinction that you found between those who go from failure to sort of continued failure or complacency, I guess you'd say, or from failure to success? What is the most distinguishing feature?
I think it's the ability to have an analytical understanding of your own role in whatever failure you just went through. It's difficult to have the kind of self-awareness that lets people say, okay, something just went wrong. I need to figure out what my contribution to that was so that I can improve upon it. That's really important. That's
Sure.
self-improvement. And I need to find out what else was maybe an externality, something that was beyond my control, and really not worry about that. That is actually very difficult. It's easy to say, and it's very difficult to do in practice. And I think even people who are able to do that, they will have an emotional reaction when something goes wrong. Almost everybody feels the instinct to blame, but the people who are able to sort of put that aside and be a little more clinical at figuring out what happens, they're the ones who are able to figure out, how do I do this better next time? And that's really critical.
All right. Thank you so much for being on the show. Rick, tell us where we can find your book and your work.
I'm a columnist for Yahoo Finance. That's finance.yahoo.com. And my book is at my personal website, which is rickjnewman.com.
rickjnewman.com. Thank you so much, Rick, for being on the show.